Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm Maddie Roach, your host for today's podcast. Alan Moore is still enjoying his sabbatical. I'm excited to have the Financial Design Studio team, a fee-only XYPN member firm in Deer Park, Illinois, on the show today. Husband and wife duo Michelle and Stephen Smalenberger started FDS almost 3 years ago with the intention of eventually growing out their team. Trevor and Rob, on the other hand, each started their own firms at nearly the same time with the intention of always being their own bosses. Thanks to networking and close proximity, Stephen, Michelle, Trevor, and Rob got to know one another and each other's strengths. As Michelle and Stephen vision boarded their perfect future for FDS, Trevor and Rob were part of it. After several long conversations over a number of months, the four couldn't continue to deny their synergy or ignore the potential of teaming up. Just earlier this year, Rob and Trevor folded their firms into FDS, and the rest has been history. As you'll listen to this episode, you'll hear the energy around what they're building and the trust that they have among one another. Michelle talks about her intentionality behind offering equitable ownership among the four partners and how that's been a cornerstone to how they work together. Each person has a say, an equal one at that, and benefits equally from the shared growth. Trevor and Rob discuss how once they got over their ego of pivoting from their initial directions, they now feel like they offer a higher quality service to more clients than they ever could have done on their own. The team encourages other advisors who are struggling to wear all the hats, or even those who are just lonely being entrepreneurs, to consider an alternative path of merging firms. If you're interested in joining forces with like-minded advisors or are considering growing your team, then you won't want to miss today's episode.
XY Planning Network's annual benchmarking survey is out. Are you curious about the average number of clients XYPN members get in their first year, or how successful niches really are? To answer these burning questions and more, we've again enlisted a professional research firm to complete our annual benchmarking study. Get your copy hot off the press and discover vital statistics such as the median advisor revenue by years in practice and sources of firm growth, from referrals to blogging, social media, and more. Head over to xyplanningnetwork.com/study to purchase your copy today.
You can find any of the resources we mentioned during this episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/235. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Michelle, Stephen, Rob, and Trevor, the FDS team.
Hi, Maddie.
How you doing, Maddie?
Thanks for having us.
Yes, listeners, you're in for a great episode today. We've got Financial Design Studios with us. We are going to be talking about a topic that's slightly different than what we've talked about before. Typically, we follow the career paths of different XYPN members and financial advisors, but today we are lucky enough to have four awesome individuals on the line with us to talk about how 3 different firms merged into one just this year. So I'm really excited to dig in. We're going to briefly touch on everyone's backgrounds, but really get into the nuts and bolts about how this merger happened, how the transition went, and where they hope to go. So, Michelle, why don't you start us off and introduce us to your firm and what you've built so far?
Yeah, so Financial Design Studio in total, we'll be starting our 4th year. So in our 3rd year, and in August, we merged the 3 firms together. So we're continuing as Financial Design Studio. And together we have 86 clients today and annual revenue of about $285,000 to $300,000. Yeah, that's our current size and makeup.
Awesome. And let's stick with you, Michelle. Tell us about what was your drive to starting your firm 4 years ago? What motivated you?
Yeah, my husband Steve and I were both working at a firm. And I think we just felt like it was time that we launch our own. I had been there for 15 years, started my career there right out of financial planning school. And so we had been there, kind of learned a lot through that firm. And we just felt like it was time. We kind of, maybe stopped growing and we were ready. So we launched our firm and got started and kind of just continued everything we had learned there. So it was a great backdrop for us to learn and really build on that. And we were ready to launch on our own.
That's awesome. And Stephen, what was that process like for you to break away and start your own firm?
Yeah, you know what? It was exciting, scary, kind of all in one. Something that you talk about and dream about for years, and then to finally decide to do it was, looking back, we're so glad we did.
Yeah, I rarely meet members who regret this decision. So let's jump over to some of the new additions to Financial Design Studio. Rob, why don't you introduce yourself and what you had built prior to FDS?
Sure, yeah. So I was previously in equity management. I was an analyst for an investment manager here in Chicago for about 20 years. And then we became victims of the demise of active equity management. My firm shut down. So I decided to open up an RIA. I always want to work with people. So I did that in the middle of 2017 and grew it to a couple clients. It wasn't quite where I wanted it to be, but it was a great experience building it for a couple of years prior to joining FDS.
Love it. And Trevor, how about you?
Sure. So I actually started my career in 2010 after I graduated school from Virginia Tech, moving out here to the Chicagoland area. I worked for a firm for about 6.5, almost 7 years, and just realized I'd kind of been there too long. There were a couple things that I just realized weren't going to be a good long-term fit for me. So I'd been noodling around and figuring out, okay, what's my next step look like? And ultimately it turned into starting my former firm called Presence Financial. Started that in January of 2017 and grew that to about 22 clients and about 5.5 million AUM, and before merging into Financial Design Studio.
Awesome. And Michelle, did you set up FDS with the intention of hiring staff, or was your intention always to merge with other advisors?
Yeah. So when we started, I think we knew it would always grow bigger beyond us. So whether that meant hiring or merging, we weren't exactly sure of what those steps would be, but we did always know it would be, beyond just the two of us. So bigger than that.
Awesome. And I guess just expand a bit on this pivot point that you made. At what point did you decide that it was time? I mean, it took you 3 years or so to get there. What was the reasoning behind opening the firm to new additional talent?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Financial Design Studio was growing really well. We put a lot of time into marketing and things like that, and we were growing very quickly. And so it was kind of getting beyond the point where we could continue to do everything well. So there were things that we were doing everything okay, but as we've noticed now post-merger, there's certain areas, I think, when you start your business, wherever you have your strength or your interest. So let's say you like marketing, you're probably going to do a great job at that, but maybe compliance is going to suffer, for example, or your processes or things like that. So there were definitely things that we were doing well, but areas of the business that we could go more in depth to really have great things like process and procedures, really documented. So we just started to notice there were things like that. We were growing quickly, and we didn't want new clients or existing clients to experience any lack of service or notice anything that we weren't doing well because we were growing so quickly. So we really kind of said at this point, we could either hire and train people, or we knew of other XYPN advisors in our area. And we all had kept in touch, or we bumped into each other, at multiple times. So we kind of knew where each other was at. And we also knew of Trevor and Rob's strengths. And we really felt like they had knowledge and strengths in areas that we didn't. And so the four of us together, we felt like could be a really great team because we each had our own area that we could kind of take and run. And everyone had been a business owner. They knew what that was like to run their own business, to not get a paycheck, things like that. So there were just certain things that you can't train people. And, someone coming in as an employee, they're going to expect to get paid what you tell them you're going to pay them. So there were certain things, I think, where we were at with the business that we were more comfortable merging. And it's kind of setting a foundation to grow it even larger rather than just hiring and training and kind of slowly growing. I think that was just kind of how we saw that ahead.
Absolutely. And Stephen, would you mind walking us through kind of just overall, how do you break up ownership of different tasks and responsibilities and accountabilities within the firm, just so the listeners kind of know as we go into more, what is everyone's specialty?
Yeah. So when we look around this table right now, each of us have a different role, different responsibility based on our backgrounds. So mine is, I come from an accounting background, has worked in the CPA world. So mine is naturally the bookkeeping, the invoicing, taking care of like tax planning for clients. So when we look around, it's really based on what we've each experienced. Rob is naturally, being a CFA and working in the investment world, he naturally handles all our investment management. Michelle does a lot of the financial planning and brings this all together. Trevor's background in insurance and annuities in the tech world, that's naturally his strengths, but we all tend to tag team the financial planning together. A really cool story. Last week, we were pulling up a financial plan for a client, threw it up on the screen, and all four of us looked at it and gave different insights. What would we do different? How would we change this? What did I see versus what did Trevor see? And really was able to develop a really cool plan and a finalized product that we could give to a client. So kind of like four doctors in a room looking at the same case, we were able to really tag team it.
What a beautiful way to leverage strengths, but also what a value add to your clients.
Yeah. I think too, we all feel like we're having fun. I mean, anytime we do that. So any new client, and I will say like after the merger, we've grown a lot more than we expected. And so, but in that we've had new clients come on, and it's been something where we sit around the screen to do that for every new client. I think we all come away with something that we didn't even know, like in our planning, expertise area, whatever you want to call it. And I think we all feel like we're personally growing because we're learning something from each other too. And I think that becomes something really important as a person, that you want to feel like you're learning more and growing. And now that's, just something that we're all adding.
And I think Michelle has a really good way of describing our roles and responsibilities. She calls them divisions or departments. Maybe you can share a little bit about that, Michelle.
Yeah, I think when we look long term, the goal is that, Rob, maybe with investments, for example, he's, we're all kind of talking about philosophy. He's really researching the models, researching the different investments, really going deep. But, in the long term, if we grow this to what we want it to be, then he may have a couple people working with him. So he's going to maybe do more of the research, the models, but he'll have someone maybe placing the trades, doing the rebalancing, things like that. So it's, we're each kind of forming like a division where you'll get people under you eventually. So then, you can kind of run your part of the business, but yet we're all, really one business together.
And in some ways, we're responsible for that. So I'm responsible for keeping the books updated. And I don't need Trevor or Michelle to kind of stay on me because that's my role. That's my responsibility. I develop that. I bring it to the team. Just like each of them, they're ultimately answering for the work that they're doing and presenting it to the team weekly, monthly, quarterly, periodically.
Love it. Michelle, who do you work with? What's the ideal client for FDS?
Yeah, so we really have two sets of clients, and they're clients in transition, just at two different age groups. So one is clients who are really beyond the basics of that career building. So they're starting to, build a net worth, but it's getting a little more complex. Maybe now they have stock options, they have some just different compensation pieces, and now taxes are starting to get a little bit more than they can handle on their own. Even if they were a do-it-yourselfer, they're starting to want to build for long-term goals. So they're just a little bit beyond kind of maybe that student loan stuff. That may still be a part of it, but it's a little more complex. And then the other group is that group that's nearing retirement. They just have a lot of questions. Can I retire when I think I can? What is it? What are the taxes going to look like? All of those things. How do I transition into retirement? Now I stop getting a paycheck. Where does that money come from going forward? So there's just, things transition happening at both of those. And I think the younger one is just because they're people in our life stage and our, what we're going through. They're building families and they have a lot going on and they just need help managing it well. They want a professional to be a part of it. And then the other is just really because I think of our tax background. Steve's like what he does in the tax planning part. There's so much that we can show them. We can really break it down so they understand all those pieces for years, not just, this year. So I think that's why those two areas click well.
Great. And I want to ask about how the clients have taken to this change. How did you explain it? And anyone can answer this one, but was that a big shift? I would imagine it was.
Yeah. So I think I'll kick off this one. When I approached the former president's clients, now the financial design studio clients about, the potential change or whatnot. I really framed it in such a way that you're effectively getting much better service, much better clarity and decision-making and advice than you were before. And you're not really paying anything different. So one of the things that was important for me was that as we're going through the merger process, that none of our clients would basically feel an abrupt change whatsoever, unless it advantaged them. So one of the ways that that's actually played out well is we have a lot deeper tax background with Steve's expertise and whatnot. So, as we're doing end of year tax planning, especially since it's so recent mine, it's been really nice for our clients to be able to see exactly what their tax picture is going to look like for the end of the year, which is something I was never able to really come up with and provide clients previously. So
great.
All that to say, you weren't doing a bad job or not providing anything. It just kind of got beefed up, like exactly. What you could do. Sure. Yeah. And then Rob, maybe from your perspective?
Yeah. I mean, basically what I told people is you're still going to work with me. I'm going to be your point person. So nothing will change there. Nothing will really change on your fee structure at all. It'll just be that you'll have more resources at your disposal. So picking on Steve again with his ability to do taxes and tax planning. Yeah, I mean, I could do that, but that's not really my strength. But, now I feel a lot more confident going back to former Honey Lake clients and saying, hey, let's look at your taxes. Let's do some year-end planning and really put some meat around what we're providing for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think our clients, so just when we were sharing it, most people, I think they were comfortable working with us. And we did have maybe one or two people who just said, we just want you to continue to do well. So I think there was one person who was a little concerned, but just wanted to make sure we weren't rushing into this, wasn't something we had just kind of quickly decided. And so I think what's become important, so we just shared it with, here's the benefits. We just, started with that. Here's what you're gaining. Nothing's changing. Fees weren't changing. And we had already decided, that no one was going to change from what they had. And then going forward, it was really that you're benefiting because you're getting the expertise. So I can say because of Rob and Trevor and their background in insurance and investments, for example, they can go into depth with that. Whereas they were getting tax, everyone was getting something different that they weren't getting before on a bigger level. So yeah, I think, and now it's clients seeing that. So it's kind of proving it to them and saying, see, I mean, we tried to tell you, but now we're able to show you. And now they really see that.
It's been really fun putting a picture to a name. So putting our new team picture on the website. And then when they actually meet Trevor and Rob in person, they've just fallen in love, which has been so cool to see.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And knowing all of you, I could see how that happens. But Rob, I want to ask you and then Trevor, this probably wasn't the easiest decision to make. Most of you go into XYPN and running your own firms because you want to run your own firm. And I know a lot of ego is attached to that, and to no fault of anyone, that this is what you've built and what you're proud of. And how was that decision to even entertain the option of merging into someone else's firm?
Yeah, I mean, exactly as how you described it. I mean, when you start a firm and you're growing it, it's kind of like your baby. You don't want to give it up. So when Michelle and Steve approached us in January of this year about merging, I mean, honestly, my first reaction was like, no way. Why do I want to give up my baby? That's only a year and a half old. So, a lot of those things, I mean, it was hard to get over that hump, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought about, you talk about in leadership, developing your why and all that. And I had created this why around really wanting to get in and help clients and make a difference in their lives. And when I had a chance to merge and kind of accelerate that process, that really came up against my own ego of, I want to be my own boss and I want to grow something and get fame and fortune from that, or whatever you want to call it. So I had to kind of get over, it took a couple months, honestly, but I had to get over that. Like, why am I really in this business? Am I in it for myself, or am I in it to make a difference with clients?
And what a great way to kind of orient yourself to your purpose and really look at what that ultimate mission is. And what we've seen over the years is that there are so many people that realize that they have a shared mission with so many other XYPN advisors. And when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of running a firm, there's half of it that you love and half of it that you dread. And turns out the other member sitting next to you can often like what you hate and be really good at what you're bad at. So Trevor, how was the process for you? And you'd built a firm already and had clients, and what went into it?
Yeah, so very similar to kind of what Rob shared and even you just shared a second ago, Maddie, where I kind of recognized that, yes, even though I loved what I was doing on a day-to-day basis, I really recognized there are things I wasn't doing really well. And there are things I was probably getting behind on. And, when I started kind of looking and talking with Michelle, Stephen, Rob a little bit more, I just realized, wow, they are a lot better in these areas than I am. And, if I only have advantages and there are very few disadvantages, why wouldn't you take it? So that's kind of how my decision process started happening. One of the things that I kind of had to get over myself was the fact that I didn't need to control everything. So that is something that I'm constantly working on. I'm always a person, I like to have control of certain things and this and that. But at the end of the day, when I realized that Rob's doing a really great job when it comes to evaluating portfolios and recommending securities for client accounts, and Michelle's doing a phenomenal job of taking care of existing clients, bringing new clients in, and Steve's doing an amazing job with just making sure that the behind the scenes with the tax practice is working, that the actual books of FDS is working, and also being the go-to resource for any tax questions. It just made too much sense not to say, well, why wouldn't you want to partner with these folks?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Rob, I'd love to ask you, just because I bet the listeners are wondering, being a year and a half in to building your business, what did you find that was unexpected in terms of the difficulty of it? You must have been at somewhat of a fork in the road to even entertain the idea, but what did you find to be more difficult doing this than you thought you would?
Well, I mean, you hear all the advice that says you really got to gird yourself for 3 difficult years to grow a business from scratch. And I didn't have a book of business or anything. So it really was trying to grow it from zero. And it was every bit as difficult and more than that people had told me. I think you hear that advice when you're first starting out, you're excited to start a business. And at least in my case, I'm like, well, that was then. I'll be able to get this thing rocking and rolling in a year or two and run with it. But it's hard. I mean, it's hard to market. It's hard to get out there and network. And then you're doing all the stuff on the tech and compliance side as well. I mean, I didn't, until we merged and started working together, I don't think I really appreciated how much I was disliking being a solopreneur when we really started talking about merging.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm trying to think how many, well, it's only been 3 months. I mean, maybe after a month and a half in, it was funny because I just want us to capture what we're thinking along the way. And, what do you think? How we're a week in, 2 weeks or whatever. So we kind of go back, and there was at one point, Rob's like, you couldn't pay me to go back to what I was doing before. And it's just really great hearing that from our perspective. But yeah.
I mean, it was a great experience. I mean, I would not go back and undo it, but, again, it's just, what is the greater purpose here? And, I'm having so much fun dealing with, clients and putting plans together and managing their assets and everything. It's really been a huge blessing.
It was fun because I think Rob's kind of like, I'm just ready to do financial planning work, to do more of it. And we were kind of like, oh, just get ready. Like, we're growing, we're not kidding. And they're seeing that too. So it's fun because, kind of what we all said before the merger, now we're able to see, okay, no one was exaggerating things. No one was saying something that wasn't what it is. And so it's fun now to actually see that and to realize, okay, we're all, serious, and we were sharing, real things before and now after.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was also one of the other unexpected benefits of merging was just how much quicker I feel as though the growth was, just because a lot of clients that have come on recently have actually mentioned it's specifically because, the team is deeper, right? You're not just working with a single person that, well, what happens if something happens to you? So now we can very confidently answer that question. And I think that goes a long way for, any prospective clients that are, considering working with us. So.
I think this is so important for the listeners to hear about because we come in with this idea about we got to get away from what we were doing. We want out from the broker dealer. We want out from the sales. We want out from commissionable assets, things like that. But ultimately, we enter into this route of, okay, we're going to start our own firm, but there are so many different options of how that can actually play out. And your merger is a really good example of that. And that as we get more honest about kind of that genius chart of what we love doing, hate doing, what am I good at and what am I bad at, the sooner we can start collaborating and leveraging each other's strengths to give a better service to the end client and end up serving more than we would have maybe individually. Trevor, what did you find to be hardest about being out on your own?
Probably the compliance work, just making sure that all the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted. There's just a lot. And XYPN does a great job with, smart RA and having the templates available and whatnot. But it doesn't mean that there's not work to do. It's just you want to make sure that there is work and not that there's work, that you're getting the work that there is, get it done. So that was certainly one aspect. Obviously, prospecting. My natural ability is more kind of, I'm the guy in the corner that likes to work on the computers and figure out processes and technology and this and that. So prospecting was never my strong suit. I was always really uncomfortable. So that was certainly a challenge when I was by myself. And it's so much better now.
The organic development of this team is really impressive. And I kind of want to go back to when it all started. I think earlier this year or late last year. I mean, it doesn't sound like you wrote out job descriptions, Stephen or Michelle. It didn't sound like you wrote out an org chart and said, this is exactly what we're looking for, and we're going to go pay a recruiter to find it. But that, in fact, it was a much more natural coming together experience. So I guess bring us back to those initial conversations and how you identified Trevor and Rob as being the assets that you wanted on the team.
Yeah. So we started talking, it was January 2019. So we basically had that discussion. Do we hire and train? Do we find people to merge with? And so I think just right away, Rob and Trevor came to mind because we knew of their backgrounds that were different than ours. So we knew a lot of their story. We had talked, even as XYPN members got together for breakfast at different times, things like that. And so it was in January. I kind of think ahead, sometimes just like months ahead and just naturally. And so I just felt like we were growing really quickly. We were going to be hitting this growth spurt. I had no idea why. Just, something that's coming. What we're building is really going to gain traction. And so we just felt like we should have this conversation, at least throw the idea out there. So we did in January. So then we set a date after that. We said, hey, just here's the idea. I really just said kind of what we've talked about. We see the benefits of working with you guys because of your individual experience and your knowledge. And then we set a date. We said, let's, meet again in a few months. So then we got back together in April and really just heard kind of what you had heard a little bit of. At first I was saying no way. And I think after a few months, they had thought about the idea. We had, they had just had a chance to kind of see in their business, there were some things that they were trying to do or projects they wanted to finish and they wanted to see those through. And so I think a few months into it, then they were saying, you know what, okay, I've tried that. And so then maybe they were a little more open to it. I think that's kind of what we all shared. And so then in April, May was really when we all kind of verbally committed to talking about it and kind of, just verbally said, yeah, we want to, at least our intent is to continue talking about this. And so then from there, we really dug into talking about all of these specific things. So the first thing I wanted to hear, and I think maybe we even talked about this in January, was what are your non-negotiables? So
what would kill the deal?
Yeah. What is something that would kill a deal? Because we really wanted to hear what are those things, if there's something that we just can't look past, or are these, things? So some of the things that came up were like flexibility and work-life balance, having a dress code that's comfortably professional, open communication, no mandatory schedule. Like you're not going to, Rob, I think you had kind of said, like, I don't want you telling me when I have to be at work. And I said, I don't want to have to tell you when you have to be at work. So just some of those things, but I think just getting them out there and just saying it so you've been heard. And so we talked about those. And I think when we looked at that list, I was just kind of like, that's it? Like that, those are all the non-negotiables, really? And so once I was like, we can do this. So I think once we saw that the non-negotiables, there was nothing that we couldn't work through. I think that really just kind of, it's almost like every conversation we had opened us up to the next one and the next one, which was a little deeper and a little deeper. And then we really just kind of started this spreadsheet where we would talk through each part of the business, because you're really kind of building a new firm. You're starting over, while we may have had the name, and we even had to decide that, are we all okay staying Financial Design Studio? We didn't want to assume anything. Even in January when we started, I'm kind of a rush person. Like, let's move on. We know what we're doing.
That is true.
I had to be patient for them to kind of say, okay, I don't want to push them because I want to make sure this is something they want. And so while I had all these reasons and I had already thought about it for months, they needed to feel the same. And I wanted us all to, be on the same page, not just me.
Yeah, there's a reason why Michelle's CEO, because I think she envisioned all this like back in January of 2019, where even though she didn't really talk to us about potential roles and all that, I mean, she had it all mapped out in her head in terms of me doing investments and Trevor helping out on tech stuff. So it's us older dogs had to come along to the party a couple months later.
But it's important because, like, if there is one person that, this may happen with other firms, and it's important that everybody feels like they're coming to this on their own, because you don't want someone who's forced into it or feels like, oh, they're just getting their way. It's so important so that we're all equal from the start, because once something starts to fester, then that doesn't get talked about. It just continues on, and then it's not going to end well. So it's so important to talk about it, say what's on your mind, and just get it out there. And if it ends up not happening, then it ends up not happening. But if it does, you're going to feel closer and you're going to feel more of a team because you talked through it together. And that becomes like your first thing, like in a relationship. Okay, we got through that. Okay, we got through that. Okay, we're three. Okay, most of these things, wow, we all think alike. And so you just see how you gain momentum.
Yeah, and the more we talk, the more we realize we have a lot of the same philosophies on how we deal with clients, how we attack a problem, how we solve a solution, that even the technology that we use was all so similar to begin with. So bringing it all together was very natural.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I love that you were able to keep both Rob and Trevor's clients and absorb them into this and give them even more value. And Trevor alluded to having some pretty big growth over the past 3 months. Could you summarize kind of what's happened since you've come together?
Yeah, I think for all of our firms, if we were at a prior firm, there were clients who they watch you as, maybe you leave and start your firm, and they're just watching because, the first year they're like, well, let's see if you make it past year 1. And then, let's see if you get past another year, and then 3 and 4. And they're watching you out there. So because maybe where they are currently, they're not happy, or the advisor, is going to be transitioning out at some point too. So you just never know who's watching you. And so some of that was people like that, just waiting to see if, we were going to succeed, and now growing and seeing that we are building something that gave them more comfort and confidence. So there's been some people like that have come. And then some people are just new clients finding us. And I think because we're a team of 4, it's probably quicker that they become clients just because they see the value of all 4 of us. And if there's a question, one of us can answer it. So,
but to put some numbers on it, I mean, I think, from day 1 to now, I think our AUM is maybe up like 20 or 25%. Mm-hmm. So there has been a noticeable amount of new clients that have come on since the merger. Some just kind of out of the blue, but as Michelle said, some of them actually due to the fact that we've merged.
Yep. Yeah. And some were like clients that Steve and we had always done like this one-time package, and then you become an ongoing client. And so some of them had done that one-time package, but I think they were really waiting to see us grow because we had talked about it. We were talking about it when we did that with them. And then they chose to become ongoing AUM clients. So some of it, it was really a combination of those, but it was surprising. So it's been encouraging to see the value of what the equity of what we're building is now, what did we say, 30% higher than when we first started. It's now worth 30% more for each of us. So
definitely.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the client relationships, you mentioned kind of vision boarding their financial plan together as a team. Do they see you as a team, or does Rob own his relationships and services them and delivers the plans, and Michelle one way, Trevor the other? Or is this, they come and they get to meet all 4 of you? I guess walk us through what a typical client of FDS would experience working with you.
Yeah. So a new client that comes on board, they'll meet with a couple of us. So usually there's at least 2 people they meet with, and it really is kind of guided by personality. There have been some people that maybe found Trevor on a search, an XYPN or NAPFA. And so they reach out. And so maybe it's Trevor and myself, or Steve and Trevor. We just kind of team up with at least 2 people. And then when we're presenting the plan, usually, again, a couple people, but then we'll pull in like Rob to actually present his investment section, or Trevor, the employee benefits or insurance section, or Steve, tax. So we kind of pull in. So they'll meet each person. We've kind of been trying a few different things lately to see if we could all four sit in the meeting, mostly for us to all see what a meeting looks like. And so we've had, several clients that have been receptive to that. It's not a long-term thing. We're not all going to always sit in every meeting, but at least we figured out, one or two people in, and then we just pull each other in. So like for that 30 minutes or something, Rob just comes in and then he goes. So you get to meet them. You get to hear the why. You get to hear that, hey, he really knows what he's talking about. So we just pull in everybody when they're needed. Mm-hmm. So it's everyone gets to meet, I guess, with the whole team. Now, Trevor, you have an example because you just went on vacation. And what was that like for you? That was the first time you had a team behind you.
Yeah, it was actually pretty beautiful. So to put it mildly, leading up to a vacation, there's lots of employee benefit work to do. And one of the things that I've always done with clients is, let's take a look at your employee benefits and your open enrollment periods and what elections do you need to make. Well, I had actually gone on vacation, sent an out of office reply or whatnot. A client emailed and asked for some help with their enrollments. And unfortunately, I'm actually not only out of town, but I'm completely unavailable. So I don't have cell service. I don't have internet service or whatnot, but I just included in that out of service. Hey, if you need something, email team at Financial Design Studio. I think same day, as soon as email went out, the client emailed that email address and it goes to all of us. Rob actually picked it up really in an awesome way and took care of everything that the client needed. And it was beautiful because I came back and was like, oh gosh, did we miss this? And then I see Rob's emails come in and was like, oh, thank you. So it was just really amazing.
Yeah, but let's go back because we have to give Trevor credit to what he had done so that we could do this. So this is one of the goals we all wanted. We all wanted to be able to have a time with our family, that we can step away from the business and you know how you have a team behind you. So that was another big thing in, merging, is that we're building that too. And so Trevor goes, but Trevor is great at process, documenting things. I mean, setting us all up with the technology we need. That's his strength, one of his strengths. And so he had written all these great notes. So when Rob got the email, he could just
literally open up Salesforce. Everything's there. Yeah. I could see the work that Trevor had done for this guy, and it was totally easy. I mean, there was nothing to it, but having all that information in the CRM was really critical to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So it's those things where, you have to make sure you have things set up so that it can happen. But
what a game of trust, and what a nice relief to know that you can go on vacation. I know Alan is on his sabbatical right now and left saying, 5 years ago, he wouldn't have felt good doing it, but now he can. And I remember, being the sole point of contact for members and finally having Taylor join the team and realizing, oh my gosh, she can also answer questions. So you do have to be intentional with setting up redundancy and processes and things like that. But what a gift to be able to give each of you the ability to step away, especially Michelle and Stephen, from a business that you've built, knowing that you've now developed long-term trust in both of these folks, and your clients can feel that trust as well.
Yeah. And like, I describe it like this. Imagine getting two people that are just like yourself, who care as much as you do about the work they do. They do the same level of detail. I mean, it's amazing from day one when, Rob's doing investments, Trevor's doing, the insurance or the employee benefits. I mean, when we're doing a plan, we kind of chop it up where we each write our own section. So it's not like one person's writing the whole plan. And it's just so cool when I look at it and I'm just like, oh, that is better than what I could have put together. It's really refreshing. And it's a huge relief when you just see, you just gain two more people that care as much and do just as great a job, if not better, than what you would do yourself. It's a really, it's a great feeling to feel that.
And that's a big challenge of a lot of our members, is that they come into this hoping to be able to do everything. And it's a really humbling experience to finally realize there are things that I don't and can't do. And the value that just another addition to your team can have, and anyone out there who's considering hiring or expanding or merging, use this as a really great example that you only get stronger with more people on the team. And micromanaging every inch of the firm isn't the best use of your time, and that developing a level of trust and process within it is really what will set you up for long-term success. I do want to know, how did you structure all of this? I mean, we had Monolife Design on just a couple months ago talking about how they had investors in their firm. That was kind of the first conversation we ever had with members who took investment money to get up off the ground. But we also talked about, how did you structure the partnership? And I'd really love for one of you to talk about, as openly as you can and are willing to, how did you go from running your own firm to giving a paycheck out or profit sharing? How did it work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know from day one, Michelle and I wanted us to all to be equal. We never wanted anyone to feel like they were a smaller part. So that meant 25% across the board. And no matter if you came with one client or 30 clients, we wanted it to be equal because we all felt we wanted it to be a team atmosphere.
Yeah, we did have one client who kind of said, well, why don't you have 51%? So between Steve and I, and we could have, but we just felt like from day one, if we did that, they would always just kind of serve as, well, I'm not really equal. And so when it came down to any decision where we could be equal so that everyone has a voice, like that, I think that just started everything off by saying, yep, we're all equal ownership and we're okay with that because we trust each other. So that was the start. Yeah. And then, so to get to that, it was kind of a combination of what you brought in with your clients revenue wise. We did a valuation of FDS, and then we just applied that multiple to Rob and Trevor. So as you're doing this, you could really be nitpicky on each of these little things. You could say, Trevor, you go get your own valuation, Rob, you get yours, and then you use your own multiple. We just said, you know what, we'll use our multiple, we'll apply it to everyone's revenue. And then we basically got to, okay, here's the 50% of FDS that you guys are buying. You have to get to this number. So what your revenue doesn't make up, then it's just a note that they could choose between 4 or 5 years at a certain percent. So it was really just them deciding how they wanted to structure it. And we were completely fine, just self-financing that and saying, okay, let's just, they're going to pay for it over a period of time. So.
Rob, how did that feel to be kind of tapped and identified as being a valuable asset to a team, being asked to join them, and then hearing from the founders that they trust and believe in you enough that they want to give you equitable profit sharing there?
Well, I mean, it's extremely humbling and extremely generous on their part to do that. I mean, we all want to feel valued in life, and I can, say without a shred of doubt that I have always felt very wanted with not only Steve and Michelle, but Trevor as well. So, I mean, it's really been incredible. I mean, they have given me the opportunity to kind of buy into something that probably would have taken me many, many more years to do on my own. So, I'm grateful for that. I have a note, so I pay Steve and Michelle a certain amount every single month, and I'll be doing that for the next couple of years. But by golly, it's mine. So
right, exactly.
I think a lot of people, both in this industry and out of it, really underestimate what an employee package can do to instill trust in the staff and to really improve the kind of delivery of the end product that, I mean, here at XYPN, we're so spoiled in terms of the benefits that we have, but, we're here and the office is packed every day. Everyone's working hard. Everyone is really bought in, whether it's equity or just unlimited vacation or, flexible work time. Those are little nuggets of trust that you can give people as you think about hiring or opening up your firm to other staff members, that is the level of trust we're all looking for. And I think Rob really hit it on the head when he said we're all looking to be valued. And when we're treated like adults and we're treated fairly, the end result is really magical. Trevor, how was it for you?
Very similar. It's when you kind of come in and realize that, hey, my revenues didn't hit the exact 25% that I was looking, basically being offered, more or less. I'm like, okay, I'm noodling around in my head. How are we going to make this up? What's going to happen? Is my equity percentage reduced out of this and that? And then I think Steve and Michelle, threw out there, hey, we can finance this with a note or something like that. Just an immediate weight just lifted off my shoulder, just because it is nice to know that across the entire board, we're all equal. So even though, yes, we have titles, and even though we have segments of which we're primarily responsible, knowing that we each have a vote and that vote always counts the same across is really, really important. So that was just really kind of beautiful in my eyes. One of the other things I wanted to share too is, I had talked with my small group, certainly about going through this merger transition and whatnot. And, one of the things that got brought up is, hey, do you have any concerns associated with, Michelle and Steve as husband and wife? Will they ever kind of more or less team up against you and Rob? And the beauty and all that, the more that I've gotten to know Michelle and Steve, one, they wouldn't ever do that. But then two, it's a benefit to know that, hey, even if, something like that happened, there's no clear majority, because, if there's another deciding vote, then we're split down the middle for whatever reason. So yeah, all that to say, it was really, really just beautiful, awesome how things worked out. So.
And Maddie, we're laughing, Michelle and I, because more oftentimes than not, we disagree with each other.
Agree. Yeah.
I tend to think the same way as Trevor, and Michelle tends to think the same way as Rob. So it's funny to hear that and kind of reflect on some of our concerns.
Yeah. Yeah. We actually asked, I think it was maybe a couple weeks ago, because Steve and I were kind of arguing about something or just disagreeing. And so I said, did you guys ever wonder that we would team up against you? And I'm like, and now you're seeing that we don't agree. So you don't have to worry about it.
No worries there.
That's right. It's funny. But it's great too, because we have different perspectives. So, I mean, we just see things differently, which I think really has kind of made it what it is, because I always joke, when Steve talks, you should listen, because I'm usually talking. And so he has time to think, and he's a thinker, and he just really, I guess, is thoughtful about things. And so we just balance each other. But I think too, in this whole, when you're thinking about structuring a merger, I just think back to my past firm. When you're working at a firm and you're thinking about launching your own, or do I become a partner of this one if it's offered and you're kind of a younger associate, there's a lot of these same things you're thinking about. And sometimes, that owner may not want to offer, may not want to self-finance it. And so you're thinking, how am I going to go get a loan to buy into this larger practice? And so I think it's some of the similar things and thoughts that you have, if you're at a firm now and you're trying to decide, do I launch my own? Do I do that? And so I think some of those same thoughts that you go through. And so you just have to decide what you want. And it was nice because we could decide together what we wanted that to look like.
Now, is this the core four? Are we looking at the official core four of the FDS team? And if you were going to be hiring additional staff, how will you go about prepping them and integrating them into the team, given the current structure?
Yeah, so I would definitely say yes. This is the core four, because I think that we each kind of cover all the planning areas. And so from here, I think the goal is that I would say what I'm mentally doing. So usually I have to kind of tell the team, hey, just so you know, I'm thinking about this and I see this coming, so that it gives them a few months to think about it before it actually happens. But usually, we'll kind of joke and say, okay, put that on the list of what we would want someone to do. So thinking eventually we definitely want to hire someone to be a support, and whether that's going to be at first, just for the whole firm and anything that needs done, but eventually, each of us to have support so that they can help us in each of the areas. That's our goal. So yeah, we're definitely looking ahead to that. I would say this is the core four, and just building, into that.
Yeah. The other thing with the core four aspect too is we all have very different personalities, and the way that we approach, or just have different perspectives in the way that we see the world and the way that we approach problems or whatnot. One of the things that we all took and kind of went through is kind of an Enneagram assessment. And Rob had a family friend who actually helps with that on a professional level. And so she came in and we went through it on a very, very detailed level. And the interesting thing is all four of us are actually different. So Enneagram has different numbers or whatnot. And funny enough, all four of us are completely different numbers. So it's beautiful from that standpoint that we all had different enough perspectives, but enough respect for one another to let us lead. So.
And that actually helped us to learn how to work with each other. So for example, Rob's a researcher. He doesn't like to be surprised by questions that come up. He wants to be prepared. So, that even helped us to allow, us to know, hey, we probably need an agenda when we're going to have a meeting. Give him some heads up if he's doing a plan for a client and he's going to sit in, for example, just things like that, so that we can respect each other and how each other likes to prepare for things. I just tend to fly, I can just go whatever, but that's my personality. And so I don't necessarily need a lot of prep, just kind of quick, but all of us are different and we need to know that about each other so that we can work best together.
Yeah. Not only in just good times, but also bad or vice versa. Knowing how someone perceives a situation, how they react to a situation, how they even prepare for a situation has been really helpful.
Yeah.
And I suspect that your end client experiences that as well, that ultimately there's someone on the team that may speak their language. And at XYPN, we do the insights discovery. We red, blue, green, yellow. Each of us kind of lead with a certain color. I'm very much a yellow. Alan is very much a red. Michael is very much a blue. He likes data. He likes lots of information, lots of research, things like that. But what that allows as we build out our member-facing teams is that individuals who really have empathy and familiarity with a certain personality type and communication style, you can pick up and really hit it out of the park with a client like that. So and I suspect that kind of plays out in your firm as well with the client delivery.
Exactly. Yeah. In meetings, especially, if one of us is presenting an area and, maybe, for example, someone thinks, we need to say this or this, you can just kind of, jump in and say, oh, but, you also did this research, Rob, maybe share, that, and you just kind of like help set them up for something else they could share to kind of maybe bring that point home with that client, just because we're kind of perceiving, oh, maybe this would be helpful. Whereas the person talking may not see that. And so then what's really cool is I actually see each other like writing notes of, okay, I need to actually say this every client meeting. So it's just so cool when you see each other trying to grow. I mean, it's just really neat to see. So I see Rob like taking notes. So I need to say this, next time. And it's just so cool. But we each, we're each trying to grow and we help each other out in that way too.
Yeah. Great. I'm dying to know, how do you run this business? What's the rhythm of it? Are you on Slack? Do you have weekly meetings, daily meetings, huddles? What's the process? And are you following kind of a really like a theoretical process, like the EOS model or something like that?
Yeah, so we started Slack. So let's see, we first met in January of 2019. We started Slack, I think, by April. So a few months after we started Slack, so that throughout the week when we weren't seeing each other, we could just throw questions out there. And that gave us a feel for, hey, I got this client situation. How would you guys respond? And then we started to see how each other would respond, what we would say. So we started Slack then, and we're still using it now. We use Salesforce. We try to have a team meeting every Monday, at least for an hour, just kind of for that a review of the week before that week. And then the next week, just kind of looking ahead. So right now, am I missing anything?
Yeah, and we're all in and out of the office. We share a co-working space. So generally speaking, we're all in there, call it 3 or 4 days a week, where all of us are there, and it's, a tight space. So, we're all very connected and all that. But even when one of us decides to work from home, we're on Slack, and anything going on, we're, it's just like we're sitting next to each other.
Yeah.
And what's funny, Maddie, is we all dream about having a bigger working space, a nicer conditions, our own private office. But the more we've stopped and thought about it, we're like, this is exactly what we needed for this time in our firm's life. We need to be huddled around each other. We need to have our monitors side by side or backs back to back, because if there's an issue, we address it quickly. And we've learned how to work together closely because we're in the exact same room, a close, small environment. And I think that's really just brought the team closer together too. We felt like if we had a larger space, we'd kind of go off in our own little areas and just become very divisional. So that's actually been a really neat thing to look back at and be like, yeah, that's why we are a close team, because we are both physically close and we have the same mentality.
Yeah. And I think because initially we'd kind of said, do we, buy a space and build it out? And that we had talked about that and looked at a couple places. And then now, we'll joke, we'll kind of say reason 151 when we get our own space, this is why. But it's just things like that. I agree. It was funny when Steve and I back at our prior firm, when he joined that firm, we literally did that. We brought Steve's computer right at my desk. And so we were sitting next to each other.
So for like 2 months, we shared the same desk.
Yeah. That's what we got a hard time about it. But it was like whenever, Steve was kind of learning e-money, for example. And so he's entering data. He could literally just turn around and say, where do I enter this? And I could just say, oh, right here. But I'm still like doing what I'm doing. So, I mean, just that, at least for a couple months, for example, you just, you have that right away. So you can just keep going. You don't have to get up and go ask that person or, break up what they're doing too. So it's helpful.
Great points.
One balance aspect of that too is we do have a headphones rule. So because sometimes it is important. Let's make sure that, if you're doing very detailed focused work, that's very much how I work a lot of times. So our rule is if you have headphones in, you're not supposed to, disturb, if it's pressing, you can send a quick Slack message since we're all on Slack anyway, and we can respond that way. So I figured I would throw that in there too. So you can still get focused work done, even though we are in a small environment, kind of get the best of both worlds. So.
Yeah. Great pro tip. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor, I'll stay with you. What recommendations do you have for kind of the fellow advisors of yours that are solopreneurs currently and feeling like, oh, this is not exactly what I expected? How can you position yourself? How can you possibly make the connections that you've made with Michelle and Steve? What advice do you have?
Yeah, I think one of the things that comes to mind immediately is to really be able to give up control. It's a really hard thing to ask someone to do, but the sooner that you're willing to be able to do that, the more likely you are to actually find success in working with someone else who has a different mode of operation than you do. So that's certainly one. Obviously too, kind of getting rid of your ego to a small degree, knowing that it doesn't always have to be about you and it can actually be about the team. And more importantly, it's actually about the client experience. If you allow that to drive your decision making, chances are you're going to have a lot more success than you would otherwise. So,
yeah, great advice. Rob, how about you? Any advice to the fellow advisor out there who's thinking maybe they would like to team up?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say just get out there and meet other people that are in a similar spot as you. Trevor was actually the first person I reached out to when I was contemplating joining XYPN. I didn't realize at the time that he was literally just launching his firm.
Wow.
And I'm asking him all this advice about launching his firm and what do I need to be doing and all that. And Trevor's like, yeah, I'm literally just doing that right now. But, I think just getting out there and getting to know people. I mean, I've had lunch with Trevor a couple times over the last couple of years. I actually rented a co-working space in the same spot that Steve and Michelle were in before. So I got to know them through there. And, just a couple of other advisors in the area. And it's just, I think the more that you can kind of get connected to people that are in a similar position to where you are, the easier it is to kind of start thinking about, okay, if you hit a wall and you just don't want to be your own boss anymore, you can at least have an avenue to go out and mention that to some others and see if maybe they're in the same spot as you.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you don't know who else exists, you don't know who else is out there, then you kind of feel like you're on that island alone, which you will be if you don't know anyone. And I think we had met Trevor at like XYPN and like Rob said, some even in a different networking group and stuff like that. So we saw each other around and we would have breakfast, just different times like that. So it was kind of making that happen.
Yeah. Explaining the value of community is challenging. I mean, it's easy because there's so much to it, but just one handshake at a breakfast at XYPN Live or one cold reach out like Rob made to Trevor can change our lives. And the more that we do that, the more we can see our return on investment with that, investment into networking and just seeing who else is out there and what they're doing and what potential there is for collaboration. Michelle, any advice to folks who were in your position where they're feeling like there's aspects to this business we want to elevate and we want individuals to do that? What advice do you have to that advisor?
Yeah, I think for us, it was knowing what we were doing well in our business and what we weren't spending enough time doing. So that was really important to know what were even those pieces that we would need someone to come in and fill. So, I mean, I won't say that we didn't sit down and say, this is what we need. So it was really just, we know their strengths. And, as we work together more, we've seen that there's even other little things that they like that we don't. But I would just say, knowing people, knowing where you're at in your business, what it is that you're missing, what it is that, could really help, but also just knowing where do you want it to go. So you really need to know there are, a lot of people that they're handling the same number of clients that we are, and they're doing it as a solopreneur and they like that and they want to keep that. So knowing where you want to be, there's nothing wrong with that. I think we just knew that we wanted to be able to take a vacation and to be able to kind of turn things off and know that we had a team around us. And so that was something for us because we did, after I think in year 2, we did actually take a trip for our 10th wedding anniversary. And we were doing work on the trip and it was okay. It was fine, but we couldn't really just unplug. And so, test some of those things out in your business to see if that's what you want. And so, whether you're traveling and does this work? Do I have internet if I'm in the middle of nowhere? It's all of those little things that you just need to test out to see if you can really function wherever you are. So we had just done some things like that. And I think we just kind of knew eventually that's where we wanted to be. So that stuff kind of helped to guide that too. But also just knowing, and they've mentioned, Rob and Trevor from their part saying I had to give up my ego or I had to, not have control. Steve and I had to do that as well. Like, we don't want to be controlling this. We see these as, 4 people that have been business owners. They were successful running their business. We don't know, not any one of us needs to take this and run it. And so it's really all of us. And we really try to get, a collaborative agreement instead of one person. We have like a decision structure if we can't get to, one decision, but ultimately we would much rather that we all agree and get to that decision together. So it's not about any one of us, it's about all of us. And so even in that, we kind of, at the very end of this, we brought our families together just so that we had like a barbecue. So fun fact about Rob is he does barbecue like competitions. And so
wins them.
wins them. And so we even just brought our families together to say, hey, like, these are your businesses. Trevor was selling his, Rob his, or merging them together. And, you've built those, your families have been a part of that. And so we, had a barbecue and we all got to know each other. And so just things like that, making sure that everyone involved is a part of it so that we all feel like, maybe there's something that Rob's not seeing that his wife sees or something like that. So I think just all of us being a part of it and kind of buying in, because your family's a part of what you're building too.
Yeah.
So.
And how many times does that happen in a client meeting where one of us will sense something, pick up on something, notice something that the other doesn't, and we're able to kind of help bring resolution to that. In the same way we wanted our families to completely buy in. If these were people we wanted to be trusting and partnering with, we wanted our families to completely agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, once I got the okay from my wife, Glenda, when she gave me the thumbs up, I'm like, all right, I feel good about this decision.
It's good. They're important people.
All right. That was a really, really incredible conversation. I've had a smile on my face through this entire meeting. Thank you all for being so transparent about how when you remain flexible, life can really take a turn for the better, and how beautiful a team of individual contributors can come together and create a really cohesive unit. I'm lucky to have gotten to know you all over these years, and our industry is certainly lucky to have you all in it, and your clients are lucky to have you all. Congratulations on what you built, and thank you so much for sharing this celebratory conversation with us.
Well, it was our pleasure, Maddie. Thank you for having us.
Fine. Thank you.
Thanks for letting us be on.
All right. Thank you.
XY Planning Network's annual benchmarking survey is out. Are you curious about the average number of clients XYPN members get in their first year, or how successful niches really are? To answer these burning questions and more, we've again enlisted a professional research firm to complete our annual benchmarking study. Get your copy hot off the press and discover vital statistics such as the median advisor revenue by years in practice and sources of firm growth, from referrals to blogging, social media, and more. Head over to xyplanningnetwork.com/study to purchase your copy today.
Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with Alan and Kitsis, and finally, to find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.